Welcome back to the Funny Thing Is podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Birch, where every week I bring you someone who shares their life-changing experience, the medicine they took to get better, and the funniest lesson they learned along the way. Today is no exception. Today I have a brilliant actress. You know her from shows like Dexter, Friends, Southland, and my favorite, The Chris Isaak Show. That's so sweet. That's the one I love so much. And she's also an advocate and an activist. One of my best friends, Kristin Dattilo.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here.
Yay.
So we'll talk about how we met.
Yeah.
What year was that when we shot that? We met
2018, 2017.
Probably. Yeah, probably 2017. We were one of 3 female leads in a movie. We don't need to name it.
No.
I'd prefer people not
comedy.
Look it up.
Just a
comedy that we filmed in upstate New York in Lake Canandaigua, one of the Finger Lakes, which was beautiful.
Like, how do you know it's a Finger Lake? Like, I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
Like, who are you?
I guess what was the history is that they claim Kristen Wiig, but she doesn't claim them because they're like, she was born here. But if you're like, where are you from? She never says, like, she's like, I was there till I was like 3 months. I don't count it.
Right.
But that's their like claim to fame. I will say the people there were absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
We got to be you got to be on a tugboat. Did we get to be on the tugboat? There was a tugboat.
Kind of.
Yeah. We shot for 3 weeks. With our other friend, Kristin. There was 2 Kristins. And that was a lot of fun. That's how
so fun.
We got to know each other so well.
And lots of rehearsals before we left.
So many rehearsals.
Yeah. Which I think is that, like, we were very method. We were like, we need to be best friends. That's going to include drinking and late nights.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Well, when we got the roles, which is so funny looking back, because I'm like, were there other people? No. Like, you didn't have other people in mind. I don't think so, right? I think we just maybe.
I don't know. There were threats I was like, I don't know that I can do Canandaigua for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, there's someone else. I was like, oh, okay, then I'll do it.
I'll do it. And then when we all got cast, he gave us like $500 or something. He's like, go get drunk.
Yeah.
And then we did lots of Patron at that tiki place.
And you got us kicked out.
I did get us kicked out.
Yeah.
I got us kicked out because, what was it? Tiki No? Yeah, we were at Tiki No in North Hollywood. And we're all having a good time. And if you don't know, Kristin was Janie from Janie's Got a Gun, the Aerosmith video. Yeah, that's right. So, of course, I kept playing it on the jukebox. And we got Kristin so drunk that we kept asking her to slow motion run. And you were doing it.
I didn't know this was going to be part of this podcast.
This is the whole funny part. And then there was a phone right in front of us on the bar. And by the way, it had a pink case, okay? And so I took it. Somebody had texted. It was unlocked. So I text back something. At that point, we're all laughing hysterically about what I text, which I'm about to tell you. But then the bouncer comes in, this huge, like, Russian bald guy, angry.
Not so happy with us.
Not so happy. He grabs the phone and he reads it and he's like, who the fuck? Da, 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 da. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was your phone. And so what I had texted was... I texted to a guy friend of his, and it was, what's your dick taste like? And the Russian guy got so mad that we got kicked out. I was
bounced us right out the door.
I was 86.
All 3 of us.
Immediately, all of us kicked out. And then, I don't know, we went to like Little
God.
Tony's or something. And I was like, this is, it
Hilarious.
was a wild night. And then we all became really good friends, which was great. Yeah, that's how it started. So what's your life-changing event? Like,
how'd you get from there to there?
To that? Yeah, so you have, like, because we talked a little bit about our history and growing up and like where we come from. I think we're both very similar in the sense of like strong women, raising strong girls. Now that I have Everly, which I've always looked up to you for that. And even in the trailer, because I think you were going through a divorce, but like how you talked to the girls when we were shooting in New York was just very much kind of set the tone for how I am with Everly, which is when you're talking to them, you're checking in with their feelings. Well, how did that make you feel? Okay, well, I understand. And that's okay. And then did you want to tell mommy anything else? And you're just like so tuned in to how they're feeling and connected. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. And so that's what I do.
First of all, thank you for saying that. That's so sweet. I mean, as a child my dad was a very blue collar sergeant in the Marine Corps, lots of other things too. And there wasn't really a room children were to be seen and not heard. And I think it was so detrimental. So there was a very conscious choice as a parent, having 2 kids saying, I'm going to give them a voice. I believe in female empowerment, especially, a voice for
girls,
all children, but specifically for girls. And how do I do that? I enrolled them in private schools that were progressive, that were focused on a voice and being heard and use your words and, emotional intelligence. So that was really, really important to me for my children to have a voice, especially because they were girls.
Right.
So thank you for saying that.
And I actually think when we did that movie, at least one of your daughters, I don't know if I can say their names or not, but your youngest was probably the age Everly is now.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah. Because she was like 4 or 5. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
And they could have been twins. Her and Everly could be twins.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
And they're best friends.
They definitely would have busted them for like bongs in their backpacks if they were friends.
1000%. They're getting arrested immediately. Okay, so what we could have gone a few ways with this. So what is a life-changing event that you would like to share?
So I think that's something I'm very passionate about and something I've just sort of gotten through the other end of. And I don't know that I can ever say that this actually has that result quite yet. And I don't know that that's ever achievable. But in 2020, in November, at the height of COVID, I was a single mom, home with 2 girls, special needs, learning challenges, having them online, trying to figure that out. I was working 40 hours online as a counselor, which was an intense time to be working in that field.
Of course.
And I was served with a parent alienation lawsuit where my ex was seeking full legal and physical custody of the children with court-appointed monitored visits for me. Now,
I obviously followed a lot of this, but I didn't remember that it was full custody and that you would be monitored.
Full physical and legal custody, court appointed, and then 52 weeks of therapy with him and his girlfriend, and then other things. So that's all public. So I feel comfortable saying that.
Right. And there are going to be things that you cannot talk about. So let's just get that on the table.
So, so that was my life-changing event.
Right.
I didn't know what parent alienation was really. I knew it was scary, and it was sort of had the connotation of something that felt like kidnapping, horrifying.
That's what it sounds like. Right.
Terrifying to get in writing. And especially as a primary attachment parent and, someone who, I was the one up with the girls every night. I was the one booking all the appointments and the vaccinations and taking them to school. And I stayed home, to when the kids were young. And, if I had auditions, I was taking the kids with me. So it was really shocking and, obviously not a healthy relationship with the ex at a minimum. So it was shocking and it was traumatizing. And what followed that has been 4 years of intense research, of defending myself in court, a litany of other things. And what I'm struck by and so passionate about as a single mom is how can I impart some sort of knowledge and prevention for women who this might be coming at them, and prepare them, educate them. There's a lot of legislation that's changed especially in California, but other states as well in the US. This is a global problem. The UN speaks on it, has banned the term for various reasons. But, it's been very eye-opening to see. I grew up as somebody who, I was a tomboy. I was very type A. I was capable and wasn't afraid of much. So I didn't really sort of acknowledge or experience a gender bias in the US, certainly not in my world in California. I grew up predominantly in LA. But it was the first time entering the family court system in Los Angeles where I was like, holy shit, what is actually happening here?
Right.
Patriarch, dominated. If you have money, if you can pay for lawyers, and you have 5 of them at $8.50 a pop an hour,
Yeah.
and you are representing yourself, there's very little room for the court to be like, well, hold on a second, this is unfair and unbalanced. Now there are concessions to that. Anyway, I was just horrified at what I experienced and still traumatized. And thank God, when I was served this lawsuit, I'd been working since I was 18. I saved all my money. I didn't come from a wealthy, affluent family like, a lot of people I went to high school with or grade school with. I knew I wanted to have a home. We were sort of, the way I grew up, my mom was a single mom of 3 kids, and we sort of hid from the landlords because she lived paycheck to paycheck.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I never want to do this to my kids. So at a very early age, I bought my first home when I was almost 24.
Mm-hmm.
After,
if you look up your IMDb, it's like you were hustling at a young age.
I was hustling.
Hustling.
I was very driven.
Yeah.
I was very driven.
I also think it's great that you weren't you on 90210?
Yeah.
But isn't it set in the high school you actually went to? Like,
it is.
So
yes.
Funny
well,
to me.
Yes. I was actually offered the role of Brenda in 90210, but I had another show that I was offered at the same time. And I remember thinking, like, this is a story of 2 kids. My brother and I, my younger brother, Brian, who's also an actor, has been on Days of Our Lives for
forever.
a trillion years.
Looks great with his shirt off still. I just
so gross.
wanted to let you know that.
Don't ever want to hear
hey,
that from
Brian,
your
what's
mouth.
up?
So gross. So, unsee it.
That's going to be the clip we use, by the way. That's going to be the clip for the whole episode. They're going to be like, what?
So, but I remember thinking, no one's going to care about 2 kids from the Midwest, a brother and sister. My brother and I are Irish twins, and like, nobody's going to care about, nobody's going to watch that. So I took another show, and then he went and tested with Shannon Doherty, rest her soul.
I know. It's so sad.
And didn't end up getting it, obviously, because Jason Priestley was there, and he's cute. He's cuter.
He's so cute. He's so
cuter.
cute. I don't know if he's cuter. I'll fight for get that Dattilo last name. Okay, so would you say that we've talked about the life-changing event? Would you say that is because I've known you and I feel like that has led you to your medicine, which your medicine is now leaning more into advocacy and activism about this?
Yes.
Okay.
For until now, there's a lot of legislation that's being changed around this, but just I think the awareness and what we allow society to get away from in the legal system lacks justice and lacks a full picture. There are laws now that are put in place basically with my case and the cases that I'm involved with and advocating for, women that I'm advocating for. They're very similar stories. I mean, there's millions of them across the globe, and they look different in Iran, they look different in Africa, like there but there's a systemic problem, which are mothers as, in most cases, the primary attachment parent. And if there are any allegations of abuse, sexual abuse or physical abuse, and then the counterclaim is parent alienation, none of this is true. The mom's hysterical. The mom's making it up. And in 50% of those cases that go down the pipeline in family court in the U.S., mothers lose custody of their kids.
No, 50%.
50% in cases of parent alienation where there are originally allegations of abuse, any kind of abuse, which brings me back to what we were talking about, the importance of women, young women, girls, women raising girls. I don't think there's anything more important. And it's why, with Janie's Got a Gun, that video that I did for Aerosmith, they have a fund called Janie's Fund, and it's an amazing organization that Steven Tyler started to help girls that are aging out of the system, survivors of abuse, survivors of abuse, young girls who are survivors of abuse. And I was so taken with that because it all starts with giving women a voice. If you're giving women a voice, there's less to be silent about. There's less shame.
Right.
The healing is faster. There's more advocacy. There's more protection for children. So it's systemically so important as women to teach our girls to have a voice, even if it's a little uncomfortable, even as teenagers. You know, my youngest is 13 and I'm like, oh, why did I teach her to have that much voice? So like, how do we shave off 25%? But I still, even in this time, I understand the importance of raising a girl to have a voice. And even though it's uncomfortable, even though I don't love her attitude and what comes back at me all the time, I'm so careful because I want to channel it appropriately. And, you know, a lot of this was, you know, really pre-Me Too, but certainly after, you know, that, and I feel like the scales are trying to rebalance where it's like, all right, let's take a little bit more power away from the women. That's like, they got out of control, you know.
Put them in their place. Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, again, I feel like, okay, well, that means we need to be louder. We need to exist loudly. We need to exist with truth and good intentions, but we need to speak the truth of what's happening, even though it's not accepted. It's that Maya Angelou, like, speak even when your voice shakes. Like, you know, right. It's so, I believe it's so important. And again, globally, like with the UN, there's a woman named, oh God, sorry, I'm blanking right now. Asalim is her last name. I forget her first name right now. But she is, you know, she's banning the term parent alienation because it really immediately silences any kind of abuse,
conversation. Yeah.
Any kind of help going to, you know, children and women, which I just don't, you know.
Now for the 50% where in these cases we'll say that the mother is the primary and that the father is suing for saying it's parent alienation. If the mothers lose custody, those kids go to the father who could be potentially the abuser.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's so tragic is, as happened in many, many cases that I'm in the middle of, is the courts will say, first of all, there's a new law called Peaky's Law, which is sort of tempered this next thing that I'm about to share with you, but it's still outrageously negligent in terms of like protecting children. And if we're all here for the best interest of the kids, we're failing miserably. So basically what happens in these parent alienation cases, many of them, most of them, is a mom, but men too, fathers, certainly many cases where fathers are claiming the mother is abusive or neglectful and the other parent claims parent alienation. You're brainwashing the kids.
Right.
None of this has ever happened. You're all hysterical and silence is everything. And then the court steps in and says, okay, well, how are we going to fix this? We have these kids that have been brainwashed. None of this has ever happened. These allegations didn't exist. And they say, let's get involved in these parent alienation camps, which are basically, so let me just step back 2 seconds. Oof. 2 steps. Richard Gardner is a guy. I'm not going to say man because I think that's reserved for penises with integrity. And there's an accountability there. So a male, Richard Gardner, in the 80s, stepped in and said, he was an out-of-work psychologist saying, you know what, these women are out of control. They're hysterical with sexual abuse. Everybody's sexual abuse. We need to cut this out. So he wrote this paper or this book sort of defining a parent alienation syndrome, which it's not a syndrome. It's never been the DSM-5. It's basically, he's saying, any child that comes to a parent, and you can Google it. I'm not exaggerating. Nothing I'm saying is gratuitous. You can Google it and hear him say it in his own words. And he's from New York. So he says, you know, if a child comes to the mother and they say there's sexual abuse or abuse, the mother's to say, you're a liar. That never happened. If you say it again, I'm going to beat you. Literally, those are the words of this guy. His work was never peer-reviewed. There's no empirical data.
I love that he was an out-of-work psychologist. It's
right.
Like, this is what we're letting.
And at the time, he was like in his like early 70s. So he's like a boomer who's who knows what that's loaded with. But we do know, like from the patriarchy, that there's we as mothers are saying, look, the most important thing is giving our child a voice. We're sending them to private schools where it's like, if there's a bully, you see something, you say something. If you say there's a no tolerance, they're expelled immediately. Yet we're sending them into environments where in the home, we are expected to not only be silenced about what's going on, but if the child speaks out, we're to say, never in the school. Someone bullies you in school, you say something, they will be expelled. There's severe consequences. LAUSD, the Los Angeles school system, all the kids have to sign contracts that if they're bullied, they will report it and the child will be expelled, and they understand those being the consequences. Yet we're sending them into homes where a parent can be abusive, and we're going to say, listen, not only are you going to be punished, and I'll tell you, like, which come, the parent alienation, we're going to take you from your primary attachment parent in most cases. We're going to place you in these parent alienation camps where the courts give these camps full power to take the parent out of their lives for as long as they seem fit. And in most cases, it's until these camp owners at $40,000 for 4 days. But like, we're talking about these
$40,000 for 4 days.
$40,000 for 4 days.
Yeah, they're not going to let them go.
Of
They're
course
make money
not.
off. It's a cash cow.
It's a cottage industry where everybody's financially incentivized to and there's a shit ton of money to be made. But the problem is that there's no peer review. This whole system is predicated on the fact that, like, there's parent alienation that exists, but that's even a falsehood of a syndrome. There's reunification therapists that kids are assigned to for 2-3 years, where they're put in therapy, forced into therapy with the parent who's violated
could
them
be
in
an
some
abuser,
way,
yeah.
or could be, let's say could,
right,
for the sake of like argument. That's traumatizing them. It's taking away their voice. They're silenced. They're stuck in these therapy sessions where, they're being gaslit and saying none of this ever happened. Your mom's, or your dad is making
Crazy.
everything up. They brainwashed you, blah, 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 blah. So it really does sort of create a template where, another scary thing is that these parents that are being called alienators, I put that in quote because, there's no psychology behind that. There's no proof. There's no data. There's no science. It's a pseudoscience.
Right.
Financially incentivized
that
pseudoscience.
We're basing laws on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They say the mother, if she doesn't abide and repent and say that it was all her fault, she made it all up, she can serve jail time. There are cases where a child, 100%. There are women today that are literally sitting in prison. Not only that, but there are kids that are being kidnapped in the middle of the night. So like a lot of these cases, the judge will approve these parent alienation camp experts, in quotes, to come kidnap the kid in the middle of the night, drug them in some cases. Let's drug them the night. Don't tell them they're being drugged. Drug them, kidnap them, traffic them. In many cases, the evaluator will say, or the parent alienation experts, in quotes, will say, do not tell the kids where they're going until they hit the facility door.
This is so much fucking trauma, dude.
Put them on the plane. Yeah, it's
so much trauma. I mean, it's all those camps, when your kids were bad, like the Paris Hilton camps and all that stuff where they used to get sent. I mean,
yeah, it's insane. So, and then, there are mothers that I'm working with that haven't seen their kids in 3 years because they won't. I
have a friend who's going through that right now, and she hasn't seen her daughter in almost a year and a half. And I'm like, I can't.
Horrific.
It makes me so nauseous to think about that.
It's horrific. And, you have to look at the parents that are signing on to this. So wait, hold on a second. You're not abusive, but you're going to take this child. And if there's special needs, and, I don't know many kids these days that aren't experiencing anxiety, and those stats are through the roof. Add to that a high conflict divorce and, court and custody battles. It's it's a flawed system, and there are a lot of practices in place with LA Family Court right now where, the Peaky's Law, as of January 2024, judges are required to start training in the nuances of abuse. So you talk about coercive control and financial abuse and post-separation abuse, and did I say narcissistic abuse?
No.
Yeah, narcissistic abuse, all those. They're required by law now to understand and be educated on the nuances. But anything that came before and even still, it's like, I don't know, I don't know that the court is really sort of serious about it. And how much can you learn in a weekend anyway? Like if you're doing domestic violence training.
There's also that, because we've talked about narcissism quite a bit on the podcast before. And like, I'm very open that my stepmother most likely has full MPD. Mm-hmm. And then I know how she tried to, like, when my parents were going through a custody divorce, how she tried to facilitate so much power in that. And that was a step parent, and like stuff that she could get away with was crazy. Mm-hmm. And so you introduced me to a guy who, and he does the comedy videos of it, but it's the one who talks about all the narcissistic father parents that don't really show up, but then, you know, will beat their chest about what a great father they are and they miss their kids, but then they actually never show up to take their kids.
Right.
Whoever that guy, I cannot remember his name. I'll tag him. I'll tag him in the comments. Yeah. And he does a video of it, but then you read in the comment section, sometimes I'll get lost in his comment sections, and there's just hundreds, if not thousands of women that are like, this was my experience. And he took me to court for 10 years until my daughter turned 18 or my son turned 18. And he just wanted to milk me for everything. And he could, because I was a stay-at-home wife until we got divorced. And it was just like, you hear all these stories over and over. And don't get me wrong, there are outliers and there are bad people on that probably try to do all this, like that do negative stuff and put the guy through the ringer. But in my experience, the fact that judges have not been trained on identifying like narcissistic patterns already, which are already very difficult to diagnose and very difficult to see. I know I've been in friendships or relationships with people for a year and haven't been able to pinpoint it until later, until somebody else says, well, you know, that was gaslighting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And to not be able to see that that's what's going on in the court case and not just talk to the children directly is like,
it's so, in these cases, I have to say the majority of them include a narcissist.
That's what I'm saying. And my stepmom would, so my mom, the court had me go to a child, I don't remember any of this, I was too little, child psychologist. And it was established that the recommendation was that I stay with my mom, who was the primary parent. And my stepmom, who was the narcissist, fought for like 5 other therapists, paid for it out of pocket, but they're like, we need a non-bias. And all 5 of them, even though paid for by my dad, they all said, I need to be with my mom. But they were just kept trying to like change the narrative with this one thing. And it's like,
thank God that was the case. You know, I started to tell you, you know, when this case came down the pike, you know, there's a disparity of power and resources in my situation, which also is like immediately skewed. If there's an abuse dynamic and there's a narcissistic something in it and you have a disparity of power, you're already, it's already an unleveled playing field, no matter how you try and level it, a judge would. And I think our judge did, but, you know, and also in other cases like this, a lot of other cases too, it's so multi-layered. And until you're in trial, which a lot of these custody cases go into, trials for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, like you were saying, somebody 10 years, and it's an onion. You don't understand. Your body understands it because you're triggered and your nervous system is, you know, derailed,
right?
And you know something's wrong, but unless you're educated and you can see all the evidence, it's just feelings which you start to sort of align with what the abuser is saying, which is like, you know, oh, she's crazy. Am I crazy? Am I being? But I don't feel like I am. Like, you know, I remember going into the kids' school, you know, and so many of these environments that are, you know, involved with the children and professionals involved with the children, schools, doctors, therapists, everybody gets polluted because you don't believe that someone could go in and be like, hey, let me tell you what's going on behind your back. And
they do it.
And it's being done over and over and over again in all these different environments. And you start to feel like
crazy. You feel like you're going nuts.
Nicole, literally, I walked into my kid's school, which I had been volunteering in the head of chairs for 7 years. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? I know I'm not crazy. Like, I feel this. I'm incredibly
Because you're not going to bad
intuitive.
talk anybody. You're not going to say anything.
No. Well, I went into the office and what I did say was, yes, I didn't. I would say if asked, any kind of like parental conferences or there was, sort of a narrative. I was very, very careful for other reasons, a different podcast, but I would say we parent differently. We really parent differently. I would never speak badly about him. But I was accused of speaking badly about him all the time. But I went into the school and I said, guys, I'm like off, but like, do I have something to repair? I know that's weird, but like, I feel like a weird. And they were like, no, totally not. Like, again, like get the crazy lady out of the office. But come to find out in trial, there were court documents being sent to them. There was meetings that I wasn't involved in where there was,
insane.
Untrue things being said, emails being sent to therapists, to, lots of people where, I was being gaslit. I didn't even know it.
Right.
Like there are stories about a father sending a diary to the kid's therapist and like crazy enmeshment, crazy contamination and pollution, which then affected this other child's treatment because the therapist was being polluted. But anyway, it's when I talk about the layers that exist in these worlds, it really is, it takes years to process and to sort of understand what happened because unless you're crazy, you don't behave like that.
And it doesn't just happen in the courtroom. Like you said, it extends into every facet of your life.
Yeah. It takes a lot of, unpacking. And then you start to go like, oh, that's why I felt jacked all the time. Like I was so nervous and I didn't understand why. And I was triggered and there's great peace and solace in that because you're like, I knew I should have trusted myself. I knew it. It's so beautifully like, validating to be like, I knew I wasn't crazy.
Right.
But certainly a life-changing, you don't ever, your DNA is systemically changed forever when you live through something like that as a parent.
What is your main goal in like the advocacy part of it now?
Well, I keep getting sidetracked, but when I was served these papers, thank God I had a house. I bought my first house when I was 24 and I would just always like put money into real estate because of the way I grew up. I was like, I want to have a safe home for my kids. So I had a house to sell. So I sold the house and I hired the most experienced lawyer I could find and afford. And not that it was perfect because there were a lot of mistakes, I believe, but I was grateful. I think if I didn't have my house to sell and a major player in Hollywood to take on my case, I would have lost my kids for sure. No question. Like I'm 1,000% positive I would have lost my kids.
Yeah.
And who knows if I ever would have seen them again, ever. Like I don't know what would have happened. It keeps me up at night thinking about that and thinking about the woman that hasn't been working in Hollywood as a series regular and
doesn't
had
have
money
the resources
and didn't have $650,000 to put towards a legal case. By the way, that's how much this case costs. $650,000.
That's insane.
It's insane. And nobody has that money. Like nobody normal has that money. So I'm really passionate in, there's an injustice that is so badly needs to be corrected. And I'm connected with women that have lost their kids and have lost their will to live and feel hopeless because the system is so rigged towards those who are, who have the resources. There's a disparity of power in most of these cases. I've sat across in many days in court with 5 lawyers at $850 a pop, against me standing at a table and having, no connection to my children, making stuff up about my kids,
Right.
talking about, hey, judge, can we not do this important mental health check-in on the kids? I'm going to be in Martha's Vineyard for the next month, so I won't be able to come back. And you're like, what?
The fuck is happening, dude?
What is actually,
what the fuck
these
is
are
happening?
my children. Like, it's insane. But yeah, so that's my goal, is to educate judges on how nuanced this world of abuse is, because that's what it is. It's abuse in 99.9% of the cases.
Right.
And how do you empower children? And when they do speak up, are we going to silence them? Is that what we're doing as a society? And if that's our choice, we have to be prepared for the consequences. So like, I'm a child advocate as much as that. Like, I really support children speaking up, speaking out, existing loudly, all of that. And if in some way I can save another single mom, a couple, even if it's 2 miles on her tire, her custody battle tire, like, I want to be able to do that, because I think it's that important. Kids are suffering. Women are, devastated at what's going on, and there's no choice. It's like you don't fight and you lose, you fight and you lose. There's no winning.
Yeah.
There's no winning. If you can't afford a lawyer and you're in LA court system or any court system in America, and you aren't educated about your rights. I mean, I could be a lawyer right now because I've done so much legal research over the last 4 years. And there's a lot of great information I have. And I want to be able to help somebody, like,
I think you need to start a foundation or something, right?
Yeah. There's some amazing women. One Mom's Battle, Tina Swithin is doing amazing work in this field. If anybody's listening and find themselves in this position, the first thing you should do is contact her. She has, I think it's called lemonade.com, and it's a vast resources, and they're not free, but there are support groups and women that come in and are share information. There's narcissistic abuse groups for women in this situation. There's a lot of resources that are great, but yeah, I don't know how I'm able to do that other than like the baby steps of like healing first, understanding what the process has been, what I could have done differently to save, thank God I didn't lose my children, thank God.
Right.
But
I also think you're in the middle of like this big soup of, like you said, you're part of Janie's Got a Gun. So there is a foundation. So you have ties with, like, you can totally figure out how to build one, do one. You're an advocate for all people anyway. Like, that's just in your DNA and your personality. Like, from when we were shooting, right? Like, there was just like, hey, I've got your back. Let me tell you what this is. This is what it looks like. This is what it's presenting as. And then now you, like you said, you could be a lawyer. And so whether it's in a form of a podcast or it's what I think you need to be on that list that you just said, a list of contact where it's like, I can help you through this and I can help you through that. I think you need to, it's just my side. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I
think you're just figuring out what it is.
And definitely leaning in and wondering what that looks like in a real way. But also, it's the most exhausting, has been such a debilitating, traumatic experience that it requires healing to do it in a way that's helpful to other people. I think there has to be a level of healing where, there's always the impending threat of court and like this. So even in, this life defining moment, it's like, it's lingering. And that's part of the abuse, right? It's like constant,
right?
It's a constant threat of like, well, any minute now, there could be a knock at the door. Some hot guy in a uniform serving you again.
It's insane. It's insane and so stressful. And like, that's one of the pieces of advice that you gave me, which was like, don't let anything with like Craig and Everly and I or whatever, like, you're just like, don't let it consume you, because it can consume your whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I already got an autoimmune disease. I don't want to exacerbate it. But
it's also, it's impossible. Like I say, don't let it consume you. And I really do, like, the people
But
that
it's still
were supporting me. It's like, wait, hold on. How it's like kind of an actor when you're like terrified of a job and they're like, just have fun. You're like, but wait, I feel like I'm going to die.
but I'm white knuckling it.
But it's the same thing when someone's threatening to the wellness and well-being of your child. It's like that mama bear. I mean, it's the reason it's called a mama bear. Mama bears will kill you if you come too close.
Right.
Like every time.
But think of the amount of adrenaline and energy that it takes to be a mama bear. And at this point, you'd have to sustain it for long term.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing if like there's literally somebody trying to attack your kid. It's another thing when it's this slow burn. Yeah. That can last for years. And you're just constantly at this heightened awareness.
Yeah. But, and that's part of the medicine, right, that you talk about in your podcast, which is, if for my journey, it's coming to terms with, I know I'm a great mom. I know I tell the truth. I know that I haven't done anything wrong and that I love the way I'm raising my girls, and kids deserve a voice, and judges in the legal system deserve to be educated on dynamics of abuse, domestic violence, whatever it is. My medicine is you don't have to defend yourself all the time. That's this stage of it just is. And I'm not going to be threatened and be victimized by it anymore, because it really not only victimized me, but my children. Right. So, there's a real call to healing right now in saying, no, you don't let people do that to you. You don't allow that. And, and hopefully by sharing some of the resources and the shortcuts and, the realities of family court, we'll start shifting. It can shift, but it's sitting in the truth of like, I'm not playing anymore. Anymore. So.
Well, normally we ask, what's the funniest lesson you learned?
I don't know what to not ask. A lot of laughs.
You're like, there's not a lot of funny.
I mean, look, we're in Hollywood, right? Like, the lawyers that I talked about that were, standing across the table that are like, I have to be in Martha's Vineyard, so we can't deal with the kids until September. These lawyers represent the greatest storytellers in Hollywood. Right. Like literally the people that make the movies that you watch and the TV shows that you watch are paid millions of dollars because they're the best in the business. They control narratives for a living. Right. And you literally have these lawyers that you're having to fight and then listen to people. Like there is, if you step out of it in like a decade, I'll be able to like sort of
chuckle.
The flying monkeys that are around these people and that are like, hey, listen, I know I wrote a declaration full of lies against you because my husband wanted to work for your husband, your ex-husband. But no hard feelings. No hard feelings because they were in gym together and they did like Mommy and Me and like we're so good, right?
You're
it's
like, get the fuck out of here.
The world of Hollywood is.
That's the comical part.
If you can, on the good days, I can look at the comedy and be like, oh God, like, wow, these people are serious. Yeah. Like, it's real.
Yeah. Is that anything else you want to say? Is there something you didn't touch on that you want to go through?
I don't think so.
You did good. So. That's really good. You could be a lawyer, dude. You're very well informed with this. I mean, obviously, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is there a way people can contact you if they have questions or no?
Not yet. My Instagram, Kristin Dattilo, KristinDattilo. And, if I've posted stuff saying like, look, if anybody needs like resources or you want to bounce something, and like, if I can help, I'll help. If I can't, I'll send you in a direction of someone that I think might be able to. Okay. But yeah.
Great. Thanks for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
The next time you're on, we're just going to talk about drunk stories and how we're almost always arrested when we're together. Okay? Not that we've done anything fun in a long time.
I know, really. I'm like, wait, when was that?
That was so long ago.
What did that feel like? What was like?
I know. I was like, oh, what's it like to be drunk? I have a 4-year-old. What's that? I don't even remember. So it's been that long. Yeah. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me. I'll have you on again. You're amazing. I love you.
I love you. All right, guys, that wraps it up for today. You can follow me at Nicole Birch Comedy or find us wherever you get your podcasts. Bye.